We never used to practice lockdowns for staff. Fire drills, yes. Evacuation plans, sure. But active shooter protocols? That was always someone else's department. Security's problem. Admin's liability. Then the email came through. Mandatory code black drill. All floors. 3 a.m. Thursday. No context, no explanation. Just that we'd be participating and to follow instructions as if it were real. The night shift crew laughed about it at first. We joked about who'd be the best decoy, who'd forget to silence their phone. Dark humor, survival humor, the kind you only understand after years of graveyard shifts and hallway deaths. I was on 5 East that night, post-op recovery. Half my patients were sedated, one was on a vent. The monitors beeped like usual, and everything felt so normal, until the overhead clicked on. Attention all staff, code black. Repeat, code black, shelter in place immediately. This is a drill. It didn't feel like a drill. The voice was too calm, the tone too flat, and then came the part that made my stomach twist. Staff in Zone C, proceed to secondary storage. Do not lock the door. Remain silent. Zone C. That was us. There were 4 of us on shift that night. Me, Lisa, another RN named Jordan, and a tech named Mikey. Lisa and I exchanged glances. She mouthed, "Why wouldn't we lock the door?" I didn't have an answer. We filed into the storage room quietly. It was barely big enough for 4 adults. Smelled like alcohol pads and plastic bins. The only light came from the gap under the door. We waited. 3 minutes passed. 5. Somewhere down the hall, a crash, something metallic. Maybe someone playing along, I thought. Then came the footsteps. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Lisa's hand clutched my arm so tight it left marks. Mikey made the sign of the cross. Jordan mouthed, "This is not a drill." The footsteps stopped outside the door. Silence. Then came the knock. 1, 2, 3. Sharp, steady. We didn't breathe. No one moved. Then the overhead crackled again. "Code black, all clear. Resume normal operations." "Thank you." We waited another full minute before opening the door. The hallway was empty, lights flickering just slightly like the system had rebooted. One of the exit signs down the corridor was swinging like someone had brushed against it. Lisa whispered, "Where's Jordan?" Mikey and I turned. She wasn't behind us. We'd all gone in together. All 4. But only 3 came out. We searched the hallway, the break room, the nurse's station, bathrooms. Nothing. We checked the rooms, patients undisturbed, alarms normal. Then I called her phone. It rang once, then went straight to voicemail. Mikey went to check the elevators. Lisa and I headed for security. That's when we heard the overhead again. But this time, it wasn't a drill. Code blue, location, basement, morgue hall. They wouldn't let us down there, said it was unrelated, that it was nothing to worry about. But Lisa's face went pale when she saw the incident log later. A body had been found, a cadaver with a fresh gunshot wound to the temple, which made no sense. The morgue only stores corpses, no patients, no live rounds. The body had no tag, no ID, and didn't match any known case. But someone had dressed it in a hospital gown, and next to it, near the door, they found a nurse's badge. Jordan's. The hospital claimed it was a prank, said someone must have snuck into the morgue, that the drill made people act out, that Jordan had maybe wandered off, gotten overwhelmed, dropped her badge, but none of that tracked, because no one ever saw her leave the storage closet. And the security footage for our entire floor? Corrupted, they said. Power fluctuation, server glitch, gone. They brought in HR, told us not to speculate, that internal review was ongoing, that counseling was available. Then Jordan's name disappeared from the schedule, just gone, like she'd never worked there. Lisa asked if we could call her family. We were told not to. Weeks passed. Nothing changed. Until laundry. Mikey was folding ore scrubs when he found it. A nurse's uniform balled up inside a mesh bag. One leg of the scrub pants had been bleached, the inside of the top still damp. And across the collar? Blood. Dried. Dark. Lab confirmed it was Jordan's blood type. I haven't worn my badge since. I keep it in my pocket, flipped backward. Tape over the photo, name blurred. Everyone knows me anyway. It's not about ID anymore. It's about not being marked. Because if Jordan's badge ended up in the morgue, next to a body that no one can explain, with no camera footage and no one answering questions, then a badge is just a beacon, a tracking tag. And I'm not giving them another one. We never had a memorial. No flowers, no moment of silence, no HR emails asking if we wanted to donate to her family. Just silence. And silence is loud in a hospital. It echoes in the hallways between 3 and 4 a.m., when even the sickest patients finally sleep and the machines hum to themselves. It grows heavy in the storage room where we hid that night, where 3 of us came out and 1 didn't. And it becomes unbearable in the break room, where her locker still hasn't been cleared out, because no one wants to touch it. Lisa transferred to labor and delivery. Mikey stopped showing up. No official resignation. Just disappeared. And me? I stayed. Because someone had to. And because part of me thought, maybe, if I just paid close enough attention, I could figure out what actually happened. But I wasn't prepared for the next drill. They called it a drill, again. 2 weeks later. Same time. Same instructions. Code black. All staff in Zone B report to secured shelter points. Do not engage. Remain silent. Doors unlocked. I wasn't in Zone B, but I left my station anyway and took the stairs down to their floor. Hid behind the linen cart again. This time, I wanted to see it. What it was that walked the halls during these so-called drills. At 3:09 a.m., the lights dimmed. 3:11. Footsteps. Heavier than last time. Slower, like boots on waxed tile. And then a shadow passed across the hall. Broad shoulders. Hood. Movement that wasn't rushed but still felt urgent. It paused at the nurse's station, tilted its head like it was listening. And then it turned, and walked straight into a patient's room. No overhead call, no alert, no nurse stepped out. Just a long, silent minute. Then the shadow re-emerged, alone, and disappeared through the exit door without triggering a single alarm. The next morning, that patient's chart said, left AMA, against medical advice. Funny, since the man was post-op, barely lucid, and had IVs in both arms. Funny since his belongings were still in the room. Wallet untouched. Funnier still that his bed was soaked with blood, but no one mentioned it. No incident report. No charting note. Nothing. They wheeled him out like he'd never been there. The OR laundry delivered another uniform a few days later. This time, it wasn't balled up. It was folded, pressed, and tucked in the pocket. A second badge. Jordan's again. Same number. Same barcode. No explanation. That night, I stayed late. I went back to the storage room from the original drill. Sat on the floor. Waited. And sometime after 2:30 a.m., I heard it. A whisper. Low. Garbled. Like a walkie-talkie with a dying battery. You let me go. I turned on my phone flashlight and scanned the door. No one there. But taped to the inside of the door, on the handle, was a printed page. Security protocol for code black. Marked at the bottom, in red ink. Non-compliance will result in removal. I took the sheet straight to administration the next morning. Demanded a meeting. Asked about the protocol. About why the badge number came back twice. About how no one ever filed a missing person report for Jordan. How no one even acknowledged the body in the morgue. They smiled. Told me it was being handled internally. Offered me an early retirement package. Said my mental health and years of service deserve rest. I haven't accepted it yet, but the forms are already on my desk. Pre-filled. All I have to do is sign. There's another drill scheduled for next week. This one's labeled Code Violet. No one seems to know what that means, and somehow I'm listed for Zone C again. I checked the chart last night. Jordan's locker is gone. Completely emptied. No sticker, no nameplate. The entire wall looks like it was painted over. But on the shelf where her things used to be, tucked behind a stack of surgical gloves, I found something. A slip of paper. It just says, "Third drill is real." Don't follow the instructions. I almost gave chemo to a healthy woman. But the scariest part? It wasn't my mistake. I've been a nurse in oncology for nearly a decade. Long enough to build muscle memory around danger. Long enough to double-check even the things I'm sure about. That morning started like any other. Vitals, chart checks, port access preps. It was a Thursday, and our usual patient, Maria Bennett, was scheduled for her 4th round of adriamycin and Cytoxan. The order was in the system. Her meds were prepared. I pulled the chart, confirmed the barcode, the order, the dose, all standard. And then I met her. She was already seated in Bay 6, smiling politely, but something felt off. She looked too calm, too composed. No fatigue in her face, no port beneath the neckline of her shirt, and no sign of the dark circles or mouth sores that usually set in by round 4. Still, she wore the gown, the name badge, the right room, until I scanned her wristband. And it didn't match. Not the medical record number, not the date of birth, not even the last name. She blinked at me when I asked, "Can you confirm your full name and birthday for me?" Madison Brooks. October 12th, 1986. Not Maria Bennett, not even close. I locked the med card immediately, pulled her chart, opened the system. And there it was, a medication order, dated, signed, dosed, to be administered today, to Madison Brooks. Same chemo cocktail, same infusion time, same attending physician's name. But I knew that signature. I'd worked with Dr. Hayworth for years. He was meticulous, the type to triple-check every dose before signing off. And this woman, she wasn't even an oncology patient. She was here for a routine mammogram. I excused myself and went straight to the charge nurse. We pulled up the EMR logs. The order had been inputted around 1:37 a.m. under my credentials. I wasn't even at the hospital. I'd been asleep. My account had been used remotely to forge the order, assign a chemo regimen, and digitally sign it using a spoofed version of Dr. Hayworth's ID. Madison had been sent to the infusion floor by mistake, deliberately. And if I hadn't caught it, I would have poisoned her. We reported it. Risk management got involved. IT security, too. They launched a full investigation, pulled login records, reviewed access logs. And here's what they told me. Someone logged into the system using my username and password from inside the hospital. Using a terminal in exam room 2. After hours. No camera footage available. That room didn't even have a badge swipe on the door. But it's where I'd last logged out the night before. That night, I barely slept. Kept replaying the interaction with Madison over and over in my head. Her smile. Her trust. The way she sipped her water like she was in a waiting room, not a kill zone. And I started wondering, what if that wasn't the first time? The next morning, I parked in the staff garage like always. Top level, 3rd row. I got out of my car, slung my bag over my shoulder, and started walking toward the elevator. And then I heard it. A faint clink, followed by the soft hissing of something leaking. I turned around and watched my car roll forward. No driver, no one touching it. It coasted forward like something gave out, right over the edge of the garage barrier. Crashed 2 stories below. Later, the mechanic said the brake line had been cleanly sliced. Not worn, not frayed, but cut. I didn't drive home that night. Security insisted on walking me to the bus stop after the crash. And even then, I caught myself looking over my shoulder every time a car slowed down. When I got home, I locked the door and dragged a chair in front of it. Sat in silence for hours. Phone in one hand, my work badge in the other. Like if I stared at it long enough, it would start to make sense. I knew what they were trying to do. It was obvious now. Someone was trying to ruin me. Or worse, replace me. The next morning, I called off. First time in years. I didn't even lie about it. I told my manager exactly what happened. Someone forged my credentials and tried to kill a patient, then cut my brakes. She paused for a long moment, then said flatly, "Have you filed a police report?" Not, "Oh my God." Not, "Are you okay?" Just, procedure. I filed it. Of course I did. But that's the thing about the system. It doesn't like accountability. And once something like this starts happening, you become the problem. When I came in the next day, people looked at me differently. Not with concern, with distance. Whispers in the hallway. One nurse, who I used to have lunch with every Friday, wouldn't make eye contact. Another told me risk management had been asking around about past performance issues. That's when I realized they weren't investigating who did this. They were investigating if I had. I went to IT myself, asked them to pull my login history from the past 6 months. Told them I wanted to see every terminal accessed under my name, every odd login time. The tech gave me a polite smile and said, "We'll get to it soon." I followed up the next day, and the next. On the third day, I got an email. Due to an internal data corruption issue, we are unable to retrieve your complete access logs at this time. Right. That night, I went through my locker. I don't know what I expected to find. Maybe I just needed proof that it was still mine, that I was still real. But when I opened it, there were 3 things I didn't recognize. A scarf I'd never worn, a chapstick brand I've never used, and a half-empty pill bottle. Someone else's name on the label. Not mine. Not a patient. Just someone. I reported it. The supervisor shrugged. Probably a mix-up. No investigation, no questions. They were already writing me off. Then Madison, the woman I almost gave chemo to, called the hospital. She wanted to thank me. Said she'd had no idea how close it was. That her labs came back clean. That she was lucky. She sounded calm. Too calm. When I asked how she got my number, she said, "The front desk gave it to me." That's not protocol. We never give out personal numbers. Ever. The next day, there was a sticky note on my locker. Just 3 words. Next time, comply. No signature, no context. Just sitting there, dead center, like it had been waiting. I pulled the security footage from the hallway cam nearby. Nothing. No one went near my locker. Nothing recorded. I started sleeping with the lights on. Stopped using my laptop. Changed all my passwords. Switched to a prepaid phone. Moved in with my sister across town for a week. But even there, things started showing up. An envelope slid under the front door. No return address. Inside, a printed copy of the forged chemo order. My name. My digital signature. Highlighted in yellow. That was when I knew. This wasn't just a prank. Or sabotage. This was a system. A week later, I came back to the hospital. Had to. If I didn't, they'd call it job abandonment. Terminate me. Report it to the board. I walked into the break room. Everyone stopped talking. And on the table, taped to the coffee pot, a photo of me. Standing in bay 6, holding the chemo vial. Smiling. Except I wasn't smiling. And I don't remember anyone taking that photo. But there it was. Time-stamped for the moment I'd been questioning Madison. It wasn't surveillance footage. It was a portrait. They want me gone. And if I don't walk away, they'll make sure I never work again. Or worse, they'll find another mistake. One they don't fix in time. And the next patient, she won't be so lucky. Her pupils were still reactive. That's what I can't stop thinking about. Not the gurney soaked in trauma blood. Not the shock pads still suctioned to her chest. Not the sound of the monitor flatlining while we were still pushing epi. It was her eyes. Open. Alive. Tracking the light for just a second, right before they declared her brain dead. I've been a trauma nurse for nearly 12 years. We see the worst of it. The wrecks, the overdoses, the gunshots, the kind of pain that leaves permanent stains on the floor and scars on your memory. So I know the rhythm of a code. I know when we're trying to save someone, and when we're being told to stop. And I knew something was wrong the moment the transplant team showed up. Too early, too eager. It was a Saturday night, bad weather, low visibility. A 19-year-old girl came in, T-boned by a delivery truck. No seatbelt, passenger side crushed. Her name was Kaylee. Collapsed lung, skull fracture, internal bleeding. But her heart was beating when she arrived. She still had a pulse. We rushed her to Trauma Bay 3, intubated her, Started blood, fluids, a full code protocol. She was young, healthy. We were trying. But 5 minutes in, the transplant team walked in. Not scrubs, not gloves, clipboards. No one paged them. They didn't introduce themselves. They just stood in the corner, watching. I thought maybe it was a mistake, maybe a coincidence. Until one of them tapped me on the shoulder mid-compression and asked, "Do we have a confirmed time of death yet?" I snapped. "Step back or step out." He didn't even flinch. Just gave me this look, like I didn't get it. That's when the attending called it. Time of death, 23:18. Just like that. No rhythm check. No confirmation of brain death. No second opinion. We were still bagging her when he pulled the tube, and her pupils, still responsive. They ushered the transplant team in like we'd just cleaned up for them. They rolled in a second gurney, switched the wristband, didn't even wipe the blood off her face before covering it with a sterile blue drape. I stepped out into the hallway, heart pounding, pulled the attending aside. "She's not brain dead." He didn't look up from his tablet. "There's a standing DNR order on file." "No, there isn't. I checked. She was full code. She was also a registered organ donor. That doesn't override a living patient's rights." He paused, then looked me dead in the eye and said, "It does now." I filed an incident report. Wrote everything down: time of arrival, code progression, her vitals, her pupils. I even noted the exact minute the transplant team showed up, 23:03, before we'd even pushed the second round of epi, before she even coded. The next day, my login was suspended. Security escorted me off the floor. No explanation. Just an envelope from HR mandatory meeting, 10 a.m. Monday. When I showed up, they sat me in a conference room with a union rep and a lawyer from risk management. No small talk, just, "You've made a serious accusation that could impact this hospital's legal liability and accreditation status." They never said I was wrong, just that I should be careful. They offered me a correction opportunity, a statement I could sign, acknowledging I was under emotional distress, that I misunderstood the situation, that I mistook a standard policy update for a violation of protocol. I refused. That's when they brought up my license, suggested the state board might take interest in a nurse who failed to understand consent structures in a critical care environment. They said it softly, smiling. I took a few days off, claimed burnout, stress, anything that would keep them from watching me too closely. Then I went back in and pulled the file. Not Kaylee's chart, the transplant registry. There's a hidden drive the team uses, not visible on standard EMR interfaces. But I knew a guy in IT, bought him coffee, said it was for a paper I was writing. He showed me how to access it, and there it was. Kaylee Winters, listed under pre-approved harvest priority. Date of entry? 2 weeks before the accident. I stared at the screen for a long time. Kaylee Winters, pre-approved harvest priority filed, 2 weeks before her crash. Status: full organ eligibility pending availability. There was even a note attached. Healthy candidate. No comorbidities. Blood type O negative. Estimated viability? High. Estimated. Like they were already calculating her parts before her body even hit the pavement. I scrolled further down. There were more names. Dozens. Each entry with a projected date, age, medical profile, and potential viability assessment. Some had a hospital visit reason listed next to the future date. Car accident, overdose, domestic trauma, even unknown field pickup. They weren't just waiting for people to die. They were preparing them to. I took a picture of the screen. Not a screenshot. I didn't want anything traceable. I pulled out my phone and snapped a quick shot of Kaylee's entry, just as backup. But when I got home and opened my gallery, it was gone. Just a black square, like the file corrupted itself, or something wiped it. I tried to go back into the registry the next morning. The shortcut was gone. I texted the IT guy. He didn't respond. When I checked his desk later that week, it was cleared out. No nameplate, no forwarding info. Just gone. Someone told me he took a job out of state. I was paranoid after that. Every time I entered a password, I imagined someone logging it. Every time I touched a patient file, I wondered who was watching. I stopped using the hospital computers completely. Started handwriting all my notes. That's when I noticed another name. Cameron Reyes. Teenage boy. Brought in with head trauma from a skateboard accident. No helmet. Minor fracture. Monitored overnight, but stable. I was his nurse, and I knew this kid wasn't dying. But a day later, I saw the transplant team lurking outside his room, clipboard in hand. Same woman who'd been there for Kaylee. I pulled his file. No mention of donation status, no alerts, nothing. But I checked the registry from the nurses' station, through the admin view. There he was, Cameron Reyes, organ viability, pending. Filed the day before his accident. No one reported it. No consent was obtained, and his mom hadn't signed anything. That night, I got a call from an unknown number. I usually let those go to voicemail, but this time I picked up. "Is this Julia?" It was a man's voice, calm, steady. "I just wanted to make sure you're getting enough rest. Nurses work so hard and sleep is so important for clarity." I didn't respond. He continued. "You've been reviewing records you shouldn't, making connections that don't concern you. Just be careful. The world needs nurses like you. We'd hate to see you make a mistake that costs your license." Click. I didn't go into work the next day, or the day after that. I started sleeping at my sister's house again. Changed phones, switched cars with my brother-in-law, but I couldn't let it go. These weren't mistakes. Someone was falsifying data, forging consent, and accelerating death, turning people into parts. The only question left was how far it went. I sent an anonymous tip to the Department of Health, used a burner email, attached a redacted summary of Kaylee's case, the time of death discrepancy, the transplant team's early arrival. They responded with a form letter 2 weeks later. "Due to insufficient evidence, this case does not meet the criteria for further investigation at this time. No callback, no follow-up. Just silence." Then I found out Kaylee's parents had signed a non-disclosure agreement. How? The Organ Foundation issued them a bereavement stipend, paid through a third-party entity. Standard grief assistance, $15,000, in exchange for silence. They weren't allowed to speak to media, file any wrongful death complaints, or request Kaylee's autopsy report directly. It was all handled internally. I tried calling them, found the number. Let it ring. It disconnected after 2 rings. The next morning, I found a sealed envelope slid under my front door. No name. Inside was a single page, typed, no letterhead. "It's not your job to question who gets to live." I've since left that hospital. I work locum shifts now, traveling nurse contracts. No attachments, no system access. I still get the emails though, from old coworkers. 2 more patients, same transplant team, same timing. No one's saying anything anymore. Because saying something doesn't help. They'll threaten your job, erase your access, slice your breaks, or worse, put your name on the list. We were told it was norovirus. That's what the email said. That's what the signs on the locked doors said. Routine, contained, mild. But I've worked in infection control long enough to know what norovirus looks like. This wasn't it. It started with 2 patients in the geriatric wing. Both came down with what looked like a stomach bug. Vomiting, diarrhea, low-grade fever. Nothing we hadn't seen 100 times before. But by day 3, they weren't getting better. They were getting worse. Delirium, tremors, petechiae blooming across their arms and neck like ink under the skin. Then their pupils stopped reacting, and we stopped calling it a bug. By day 5, 7 patients were showing symptoms. 1 coded, another began seizing. 3 refused to eat or drink, claiming their mouths tasted like metal. Still, the administration called it contained gastroenteritis. Still, they told us not to wear full PPE, just masks and gloves. Then the CDC showed up, in full HAZMAT suits. I remember the exact moment it shifted. We were on night shift, quiet, tense. Half of us were watching the monitors like hawks. The other half were whispering about which hallway had been locked next. Then we heard the sound. A hiss, then sparks. I peeked through the break room blinds and saw them welding a steel plate over the door to room 112. Not sealing the ward, sealing the patient. The next morning, all the paper charts were gone. I asked where they went. Standard infection protocol is isolation, not destruction. Digitally migrated, was the answer. But when I checked the EMR, the records were blank. Just the patient names. No vitals, no notes, no labs. Like they'd never been admitted. That's when Chloe went missing. She was a nursing student, barely 22, doing her rotation on our floor. Smart, sharp, kind of awkward, but in a lovable way. She'd been helping me with med passes the night before, and during downtime, she said something that chilled me. "I think I've seen this before," she whispered, "in our bioterrorism module." I laughed it off at first, asked if she meant anthrax or something like that. "No," she said. "This was worse. Fast, neurological onset, rash pattern, metal taste. It's not viral, it's weaponized." That was the last shift she ever worked. Her badge stopped working the next morning. Her nameplate was gone from the locker. When I asked her preceptor where she went, she just blinked at me. "Who?" I said it again. "Chloe, the nursing student from Langston University." She looked confused. I don't think we had anyone by that name. I pulled up her training schedule on my phone. It had been wiped. That's when I knew they were trying to scrub her, erase her, like they were doing with the patients. A few days later, one of the guards slipped. He was stationed at the end of the quarantine hall. Young guy, maybe military background. Looked uncomfortable in his private security getup. He asked for a cup of coffee. Looked tired. Said, "I thought this was just crowd control. But they're welding the morgue next." I asked what he meant. He said, "They're not putting the bodies in bags. They're burning the whole room." I don't know where he is now. He didn't show up after that shift. None of the guards ever last more than 2 days. Then came the briefing, hospital-wide. Out of an abundance of caution, they said, the geriatric ward will be temporarily suspended. Patients have been relocated. Relocated where? No one knew. None of them were transferred through our usual network. There were no ambulance logs, no discharge summaries. Just gone. I kept thinking about Chloe. How her locker was cleared out. How her badge stopped working. Her schedule was erased, and no one even pretended to remember her. It was like she'd been scrubbed out of existence. Not just from the hospital. From the system. I tried texting her, but my message wouldn't send. Number not in service. I tried to log into the learning platform we both used. Her profile? Gone, not deleted. Like it never existed. That's when I started documenting everything. Handwritten, in a pocket notebook. Never on my hospital-issued tablet. Never on the network. Every shift I worked, I logged what I saw. Who was coughing? Which patients had petechiae? How many guards showed up? What time the CDC vans pulled in? How many steel plates I heard being welded at night? And then I started tracking something else. The people who stopped showing up. It wasn't just Chloe. It was Grace, the night janitor who'd been on our floor for years, always humming, always friendly. She disappeared after 3 nights working quarantine. Then Dennis, one of the LPNs, who said he saw someone in a full CDC suit injecting something into a patient's IV, even though that patient was on comfort care. He told me what he saw at 7:20 p.m. By 10 p.m., he'd called out sick. Never came back. I tried to ask questions, carefully. I cornered one of the attending physicians, someone I'd known for years, outside the elevator after a shift. "Hey, about the patients from last week. Do we know if..." He cut me off. "Don't. Just don't, Julia." I wasn't even surprised he used my first name. That's how you know it's real. That's how people talk when they're scared. Then, something worse. They brought in new patients. After weeks of lockdown, new beds were wheeled in. No names, no ID bracelets. Just laminated cards taped to the footboards with alphanumeric codes. P01, P02, P03. No medical history, no admitting physician. Just orders like, Vitals Q 15 minutes. Observe for escalation. No contact without full PPE. Observe. Not treat. Not stabilize. Observe. That night, I checked the waste bins behind the hospital. They're locked normally, but one of the bags hadn't been sealed all the way. I don't even know what made me look. Inside, paper charts. Burnt. Someone had tried to incinerate them, but the fire didn't take. The edges were blackened, but the inner pages, some of them were legible. One said, Patient 112. Neurodegenerative collapse. Hemorrhagic progression. Unknown agent. Another one just said, Do not sedate. Patient must remain aware. And another had Chloe's name at the top. Next to the words, Internal escalation. Exposure suspected. Pending transfer. I left them there. Didn't take pictures. Didn't grab samples. Just walked back inside, heart pounding. Because I finally understood. This wasn't a virus. This wasn't norovirus or gastroenteritis or even some bioterror exposure. This was a test. Or worse, a cleanup. 3 days later, I was pulled aside by someone in admin. He wore a smile, like it was policy. Hey Julia, just a heads up. You've been reassigned to float. Float where? You'll cover ICU, ER, wherever we're short. But my schedule is on geriatrics. Yeah, that unit's being phased out, just temporary, budget rotation. He handed me a new badge, same photo. But the expiration date was gone. I tried to quit that night, tried to log in and submit my resignation online. My portal access had been revoked. I went to HR in person the next morning. The door was locked. Staff meeting, said a voice behind me. A new security guard, one I hadn't seen before. He was smiling too hard. So I called out sick. Got a burner phone. Booked a one-way rental car. And drove. Didn't tell anyone where I was going. Didn't even pack much. I just needed to be somewhere with clean air, where people don't weld patients into their rooms and pretend it's policy. It's been 3 months. I still get emails from the hospital, still receive generic HR messages about optional return incentives and early bonus eligibility. But every time I check the news, there's nothing. No mention of Chloe. No patient deaths. No quarantine breach headlines. Just another quiet night in healthcare. But I know what I saw, and I know what they're hiding.